Right, did you hear that the best show of all time just came out?
I did. Everybody's talking about the new ReZero.
No.
Attack on Titan?
No.
Kaguya-sama?
No.
Vinland Saga?
No, that's not done airing yet.
Mob Psycho?
No.
Spy X Family?
No.
Chainsaw Man?
Yes, it's the best show of all time!
Yeah, anime fans couldn't possibly be overreacting.
Never! I'll start writing the script.
I'll get the camera.
Right, did you hear the best show of all time just came out? Locked in a room, I'm Liar.
And I'm Rat.
So I've got a confession. I've been around the anime-osphere since 2011. I would generally watch whatever was popular and talk about whatever everyone else was talking about. I tell you this because I now know better than to listen to what the greater anime community suggests to watch.
So when we saw the hype wave for a generic-looking seasonal action show with a first-time lead director, and from a studio whose previous work was, to put it generously, a bit of a mixed bag, well, we approached with some trepidation.
When the first of inevitably more seasons came to a close, we got basically exactly what we expected to see. Non-characters fight monsters indiscriminately with no regard given to creating a sense of intrigue, adventure, or excitement. Asterisk.
We'll get into that asterisk in the spoiler section of the review, but in short, this show does have flashes of genuine talent. For example, one of the character arcs is very satisfying, and the visuals fluctuate from great to awful, but that doesn't mean the great's to be ignored. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. What is the show actually about?
This is our protagonist, Chainsaw Man. He was hanging out with his monster dog, and then he went through an anime transformation, and now he can turn into an ugly CG man made of chainsaws to fight other monsters.
So, it's an action show about this guy, then? Well, kind of. And the fights aren't necessarily bad, but it's important to acknowledge the aspects that surround the fights. Namely, the world and how it's presented to us.
Chainsaw Man has a myriad of issues, but the biggest ones stem from the painful exposition. It feels like a lecture, and if your action show is being described as a lecture, you have fucked up in a very big way.
The implications of the anime being presented to us in this way are ever-present, far-reaching, and in our opinion drag the show down to unfun levels. But to elaborate on that, we'll have to get into spoilers.
But before spoilers, some formalities. We will not be recounting the plot, as by proceeding we assume you've seen the series. The following will be spoiled. Chainsaw Man. Our score for Chainsaw Man was a 4 out of 10. Okay, spoilers. Let's go.
One of the most difficult things to do when writing anything is to communicate the rules of your world without sounding like you're rolling out a chalkboard and listing off bullet points. Chainsaw Man's incapability of doing this is, in our opinion, one of the most standout parts of the show.
As early as episode 1, we get these lines like, "I'm the zombie demon who gives people demonic powers to be zombies, and I don't like you because you're a devil hunter, and devil hunters hunt devils, which I am, and so I don't like you."
That seems like quite the exaggeration.
I offer them a bit of demonic power, and they offer to become my slaves, even though the power turns them into zombies. See, because I'm the zombie devil, and I hate devil hunters because you go around killing us devils, so I'm gonna kill you.
This presentation is reminiscent of an unenthused museum guide, giving you the spark notes of what you need to know in the most sexless language it can muster, and then moving on without ever actually giving you time to consider what it just told you. This leads to the impression of the show being shallow, regardless of whether or not it actually is.
This blunt delivery continues happening. Like the fact that Power likes cats, which she helpfully says directly into the camera, doesn't actually tell us anything about her as a person. And beyond that, it never comes up after this sequence. It solely exists to fill out a wiki. And honestly, it could have been used to give us some meaningful characterization about her as a person. But we'll come back to that. Character writing can wait its turn.
Another issue this cat scene introduces is the recurring theme of not setting things up ahead of time. Take the cigarette at the end of the series. Despite literally taking breaks to establish these characters have a relationship narratively tied to smoking, this cigarette with writing on it is never shown in any of those, so they have to crowbar it in after the reveal.
This could have been a very powerful emotional moment with very little change to the series. but instead, the audience doesn't understand what's happening until it's too late. This is a microcosm of the damage that this haphazard attitude towards exposition will do to your series.
And the few times they do actually set things up are pretty cool, like Aki's sword, which is alluded to in the hotel at being powerful at great cost. It adds some serious weight to actually seeing him use it, which is also helped along by the stylistic way that it counts and cuts to black. This whole scene in general is awesome, really.
Circling back to the sexless language and the unenthusiastic delivery, I would like to call your attention to the hotel scene with the Eternity Devil. The passage of time is not properly conveyed. Well, like in a purely literal sense it is with this line, but like what I would have liked to see is the emotional toll that it's taking on these characters, maybe some creative use of framing to convey a sense of claustrophobia.
There is one thing, though. There's this secondary character that's clearly shown to be having some sort of mental or emotional breakdown as a result of being trapped in the hotel. But she continues to be a relevant character and fighting off these people in the middle of the ambush. But she just always looks like that. This diminishes the impact of her having this breakdown in the middle of the hotel, making it generally misleading, uninformative, confusing.
Like a group of kindergartners being read aloud to in a sandstorm, I find this method of storytelling extremely dry and abrasive. But hey, at least with all this exposition, we have a great idea of what's going on, right? Well, no, and that's especially puzzling. Even though there are so many full stops to exposit, we still have fundamental world-building questions.
Like, take the Leech Devil from episode 4. So devils are just like walking around metropolitan areas. No reports, no nothing. But apparently there's a bunch of civilian hunters, so none of them saw. And this whole civilian hunters thing is an entire can of worms.
The first 30 seconds of episode 3. This line right here is crazy. So let me get this straight. Civilian devil hunters hunt devils, sure. But if public security comes and helps them, public security could come and get arrested? So are there like fucking dibs? The civilian hunter at the end of episode 2 is calling for backup, so what's wrong with Power helping him? Also, what about the badge that Power and Denji flashed to the police in episode 2 that says it's also to be used on other devil hunter squads? Is it just first come, first serve? Do the private sector people supersede the government? What the fuck is happening?
How about some even more basic questions? What happens when you kill a devil? Does the fear that manifested them go away? Does it slowly make a new devil? This is where I might expect to hear the response urging us to wait for an additional season, but I'd argue that without this kind of information, it makes it hard to empathize with the stakes, if there are any at all, considering that Denji can't die.
And to clarify our problems with missing information, I'm fine not knowing the master plan of the main bad guy. That seems like a decent thread to leave hanging for people that might be interested in a second season. Critically, however, I would like to know how your world works. Please? Don't think you should wait for season 2 for that one.
Mirroring and exacerbated by the exposition issues, the characters are woefully underdeveloped, and what little we do know about them is simply plastered on their face, like the cat example from earlier.
Let me elaborate on that. This was Walmart 02's chance to give us an insight into her personality by expressing the differences between cats and humans. If you'll excuse my fanfiction for a moment, imagine if she said something like, "Cats don't have any prejudice, responsibilities, or hatred. I wish I could just play with my fellow cat instead of following all these stupid government regulations and petty cultural feuds." We would have a window into her personality, and also we'd be able to empathize with why she wants to be distanced from humanity. But I'm glad that we know she likes cats, because that was important.
Though she should consider herself lucky, because Makima barely even gets that. She sits brooding behind a desk off screen, and her only real contribution to the plot is a criminally underexplained and seemingly underthought scene where she avoids an assassination attempt by just not dying.
She then maybe alludes to, knowing this was going to happen ahead of time. But if that's the case, why didn't you stop it a day before? Does this not make her principally responsible for Himeno's death? Also, if you were going to kill everybody with your Death Note powers, why didn't you kill the 2 people that actually matter? This doesn't make your character appear cryptic, this makes your character appear nonsensical.
Do you know what? Instead of just firing shotgun blasts in the direction of the character writing, let's compare two characters more directly, Denji and Himeno. One bad and one good, respectively. That way we can do a little bit better than just saying the characters are bad and compare them in a direct one-to-one format.
Himeno, which the fandom page goes out of its way to says has a, quote, voluptuous build, real classy, keep it up, guys, is a character that is written very intelligently and concisely. Her relationship with Aki is visually reinforced many times as they both smoke, Himeno being the reason that Aki smokes. And also, she clearly values the camaraderie, and it's later revealed that she's also really protective, having lost pupils in the past under her watch.
This, in turn, is reinforced and expressed to us in the form of her offering to be Denji's wingman. She wants to support people and is comfortable in the role of guardian, wanting to foster her peers' goals, even if they may seem silly.
This gives us some real emotional weight during the rooftop fight where Aki is in danger. Himeno's motivations are understandable. We can empathize with her sacrifice. Also, Aki's response in episode 10 is also understandable because he's calling into question his smoking habit, that being tied to her memory. Hey look, it's almost like when you set something up ahead of time, it turns out good. Who knew?
Now, Denji. Denji's quest for boobs is annoying at best. I won't lay out my feelings on the consistent over-sexualization in anime because I think we did a pretty good job of that in our previous review of Hidden Dungeon. But just know that Chainsaw Man doesn't exactly have anything new to say on the subject.
At first I thought the boob quest might be a joke, but then the dream battle happened. I'm not sure why we had to make the leech fight about touching boobs being a valid dream. It all comes off as very Reddit incel, which would technically be a character. Here's the problem.
He gets to touch a boob and Power plays a joke? Is that what this is? Sure, a joke on him by having padding there for the first touch, leaving him feeling underwhelmed even though he achieved his dream.
This could have been used as a jumping off point to explore a number of things. Dissatisfaction, the harmful nature of animalistic lust, Denji's perception of women, maybe. Well, that looks like it's about to happen when he expresses his problems to Makima, and she says that sex is better with someone that you have a connection with. But then Makima and Himeno both offer him sexual favors in exchange for tasks, so we just throw that out the fucking window.
This is the opposite of character growth, ignoring pivotal events by just having Denji not reflect at all. I'm not saying he necessarily has to change as a person, but a reaction would have been nice. This happens with the kiss with Himeno, too. These two events just go entirely unexplored, leaving Denji feeling static and one-dimensional. Just a scrappy kiddo who's too good for things like growth and change.
His bad boy image of an unbuttoned shirt and a half-done tie doesn't really hold water, though. He just, works for the government, does whatever they say, and never does anything rebellious. Critical to the punk identity is anti-establishment and anti-authority. Just buying your threads at Hot Topic and listening to emo rap doesn't make you punk, it makes you cringe.
This analogy works for the show at large, funnily enough. Spilling tons of blood and having tons of implied despair, but being scared shitless of actually doing anything of consequence. And you know what? The one time you do kill a character and actually mean it is the one time your show threatens to be good.
Okay, finally. The fights. Come on, what's the verdict? I need to pick me up.
They're okay.
Yeah, what?
Well, they're fine. Nothing to write home about at all. Lots of quick cuts to mask mediocre choreography. Denji and Power are mortal, so the stakes are through the fucking floor. The art and animation vary from above average to the same cityscape over and over.
A quick interjection about the setting. I really hate that there's no thematic, or literal, frankly, reasons for the fights to happen where they happen. The zombie devil fight just happens in a warehouse. The bat is half barn house, which admittedly does make sense, and half metropolitan area, and all of the other fights are the same metropolitan area. Why not do the leech demon fight in a marsh, where leeches live?
The fight at the end especially leaves a lot to be desired, implementing the cheesy samurai sword cross thing, 4 times in 3 fucking minutes? And what does fighting this guy even achieve? Was he important? How does this further the main conflict?
Compare these two, again, the fight with Aki and Himeno on the rooftop. Stylistic presentation of a fight with some very real stakes, thematic and otherwise, punctuated by awesome framing and animation. Do this.
This scene makes the rest of the series that much more disappointing. Maybe with some budget reallocation, we could have had some actual nice-looking combat instead of high-definition cooking content with your host Sasuke. Priorities are a powerful thing.
Look at that! We got through an entire review of Chainsaw Man without talking about the CG. Let's just wrap this up.
Before we get to the conclusion, we'd like to indulge ourselves with a little bit of an aside. If you've managed to make it through a negative review of a popular show, you're exactly the kind of person that we want to reach with what we say next.
We've interacted with quite a few people that were disappointed with the adaptation of the beloved manga into an anime, up to and including the advent of this petition to do it again with a new director. This is nothing new.
Adaptations of an art piece get bungled and twisted all the time. Even mainstream consciousness is aware of this, with Disney live-action remakes and video game remasters that inevitably end up ruining the original.
So, in regards to this series in specific, I would like to implore you, try not to follow whatever gets branded as Chainsaw Man. Instead, support the original author's work, not whoever buys the license to wear its skin. Consider that what you liked was the vision of the original creators, and therefore the works that they've put out before or will put out after, and not a publisher trying to sell you something that you already own.
To conclude, Chainsaw Man is a mixed bag that, when watched with your brain turned on, leaves a lot to be desired. Maybe if you want to fuck Power and Denji comes off as a too cool for school little rascal, then I'm glad you got more out of this than we did.
For me, I will let this be a reminder to be wary of mainstream hype, as hype is fickle and meaningless in the best of times and misleading in worse scenarios.